I was astral traveling for maybe just half a minute, if that long. But what I saw and what stuck with me was like much deeper than that. When you're traveling in these other realms, time doesn't really have the same meaning.
Wow, this hit differently.
That is when I knew that this was the Lord.
That's a good question.
I figure if I do it, it'll force me to learn it.
Well, that's why I know him.
The Scene with Sean Uy, Behind the Book, featuring today's book.
Hello, folks, and thank you once again for stepping into the scene with me, Sean Uy. Today, we have an amazing author who has written a very compelling and very, very powerful comic book / graphic novel with very interesting and very, very unique artwork, I must say. Today, we are going to be talking about everything. We're diving deep into his inspirations, the challenges, and the true-to-life story on why this book and how this book came to be. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all please welcome Mr. David Cole. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Sean, for having me on.
Awesome. So, like I was saying, very, very unique book. There's a lot of truth that's gone into this book. Before we dive deep into the content, David, I want to ask you, because a book like this, obviously very unique, what were some of your inspirations? How did this come to be? What was the trigger point? Tell us about that.
Well, I'll give you the 10,000 foot story first.
Sure.
So, in June, July of 2021, I experienced or went out of body after.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was after I had a stay at the emergency room and later the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, this was during the height of the pandemic.
Right.
And, I came face to face with my mortality in that experience and went through what can only be described as a true death of the ego.
Oh my.
And that followed with a series of out-of-body experiences, visions, and a spiritual awakening that basically opened the genie in the bottle. And my life has been a crazy series of experiences ever since. And it just kind of kept ramping up in intensity after that initial OBE. And after a few years of this, I started to tell my wife, I was like, I could write a story about all this that would be better than Star Wars. And,
Right.
And eventually I just sat down and started doing it. So this book really is the result of my firsthand experiences with going out of body and astral traveling, but it's much more than that because,
Yeah.
since I had that experience, I've also had loads of information and let's
Yeah.
call them interesting people find their way into my field, and often things that tied in with the visions I was having in very strange ways.
Right.
So my books are not only informed by my own personal experience, but also by the writings of classical esoteric authors such as
I see.
Guy Ballard, also known as Godfrey Ray King, who wrote the I Am discourses, Samael Aun Vior, who is a very prolific Christian Gnostic author from the mid 20th century. So and various other classical spiritual texts as well.
Awesome. And before the whole experience or the out of body thing, in the astral planes and all this, which is incredible, by the way, and I want to get to that in a bit. But before that huge life-changing event happened, were you how was your life different before and when that happened. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, so I grew up in a very, I would say, strictly religious environment, and
Oh,
I don't want to. I'm not here to step on anyone's toes or call
right, right.
anyone's religion bad. I'm
Hear ya.
just speaking about my experience,
Mm-hmm.
and over the course of my life, I experienced some things in that religion. I saw some ugly sides of it that really caused me to doubt all of it, and ultimately to doubt God. I blamed God for those things, and I hated him.
Right.
And I considered myself an atheist, actually,
Yeah.
and possibly even a Levian Satanist at times.
Okay.
So, but on that journey, I met some real Satanists online,
Okay.
and I learned
Wow.
about some of the activities that they were up to. And one of the things I learned is that, in a lot of cases, they were secretly like priests and preachers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And they were quite proud of that. And so that was just kind of a fact entered into my head. This was pretty much right before I went to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And also while I was at the hospital, I started reading a lot more about, I guess you could say, conspiracy theories, and like what some of the elite in our world are up to.
Illuminati and all of that, right?
Oh yeah. And so the wheels started turning in my head, and I started really thinking, if like people who are in positions of power in the church are actually bad, like they're actual Satanists,
Right.
wouldn't they lie about God? Wouldn't they want you to believe something false about God?
Yeah.
And so that kind of played in as a catalyst to my spiritual awakening.
Right. And I completely agree with you. In fact, I resonate so much with that story of yours. Just as you've said, I too, before I found God, was a self-proclaimed Satanist as well, an atheist, and all these things. But it's amazing to me, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me here. It's because we've gone through all these things. I basically try to call this like a before I was born kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was born, obviously, we were doing this and that, and we had no idea. And it's amazing to me because he is so faithful throughout all of this, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's so powerful because despite us being such bad and rotten kids, he's never let us go,
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it's going back to what you just mentioned, my goodness, the leaders of, and I'm pretty sure I know which denomination you're talking about, but let's just not, let's not just leave it as it is. Because you've been through that, you've gone through the whole out-of-body experience. What was your biggest takeaway in terms of, you had to go through a phase of self-reflection, you had to go through a phase of just contemplating what happened. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, there was something you said that struck me, because it definitely came through as I started to have this out of body experience. So, God took me on like what we call like a life review.
Okay.
And one of the things he said to me about my experiences in being disappointed with the church was, and I blamed him for that. And what I came to realize was that, and what he said to me was that he didn't have anything to do with those things.
Amen to that.
And basically what he said was, it's a shitty world,
yeah,
and shitty things happen, and it just wasn't your day.
Right.
And that was some hard truth to hear, but it made all the light bulbs come on. And what you were talking about how he's so faithful, it's so true, because I remember the day when I said to God, this was years ago, when I said to him, that, hey, if you're not going to help out then just stay away from me.
Right.
Like, leave me alone. And the funny thing about it, when you ask God to do that, he might let you think that he's listening to that and leaving you alone, but he never leaves you alone.
Yep.
There's always that presence there with you, guiding you. And ultimately, as I looked back through my life review, I couldn't deny that he had been there the whole time.
Yeah. And yeah, that's super true, especially with the fact that, let's face it, I'm pretty sure you and I went through the same thing, getting mad at him. In fact, maybe that's probably the first and only time that we've actually faced and spoke to him. It was us probably cussing him out or being angry at him. And as a father, that probably can tear your heart. Your kid's doing that to you, right? But yeah, that was and predestined to happen. It had to happen because it led us to this point right now. It led to the creation of the Lion of God. And I want to talk about that now a little bit. The Lion of God, such a powerful title with a very, very powerful imagery on the cover. Let's try to imagine for the folks at home, you're walking down the aisles of bookstores, or maybe you're shopping on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, whatever. You see the Lion of God. It's hard to click away from that. But for the folks at home, what's the reason why you called it the Lion of God, David?
Well, so I mentioned earlier that there are a number of classical esoteric authors who have heavily influenced my book. So one of the chief authors is Samael Aun Vior, who, depending on who you ask, he's somewhat well known in, let's say, mystical or Gnostic circles. Right. Not always.
Yeah.
But he was he coined the term universal Christian Gnosticism.
Okay.
So he definitely was a author and an authority coming from the Gnostic perspective, but I would say much different than the Gnosticism that you see prevalent on the internet today. Like, modern Gnosticism is a very, I don't know, it seems like they're looking for a devil to condemn more than anything.
Yeah.
And really, it's not, true Gnosticism is not this way. It views the universe as all part of God's ultimate plan, and whoever the players are in it, whether they're good or bad, they're probably just good or bad from somebody's perspective.
Right.
So that's and there's so much more I could expand on. But
go on.
Samael Aun Vior, you asked where the Lion of God came from.
Yeah.
Samael Aun Vior, he talked about the Archangel Samael quite a bit.
Okay.
Quite a bit. And one of the things that he had to say about Samael is that he is God's prosecutor. He is the one who delivers judgment and justice on behalf of God.
Okay.
Which is why, for example, in the Old Testament, he often seems like a negative figure, because nobody likes being on the receiving end of that.
Right.
And so he compared them. Basically, he said that Jesus was the Lamb of God, the advocate, and Samael is the Lion of God, the prosecutor. And they're both fulfilling a God-ordained role.
I see. So
that's where the name the Lion of God came from.
And I got to ask you this, because obviously this was inspired by everything that happened to you. The Lion of God itself was inspired by your influences and everything. Would you say that, the main character of the story is somewhat a reflection of who you are, or of yourself that you put down on the book?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This story, I mean, it's not meant to be a word for word retelling,
right?
Like an autobiography. It is inspired by and based on the things that I really experienced.
Right.
Like, for example, in the first book, there's a scene where I astral travel to this other realm where there's these little blue forest spirits and a swamp demon. That really happened to me. I really had an experience like that. Now, it didn't end with a battle. I added that part to make it,
Of
a
course.
better story.
Yeah.
But I really saw that place, and I really saw them getting ready to fight that swamp demon. And so when I decided to turn it into a story, I was like, well, if the angel of judgment had really been sent there, like to answer their prayers, what would he do?
Right. That's pretty cool, David. Really cool. I gotta ask you though, because obviously I've never tried that. I've never had that experience. Well, what's it like going to the astral plane, or were you able to see your body? One of those things.
Well, it's usually if I see something like that, it's like a glimpse, like a hint of memory. Sometimes I see a broader vision, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Like when I saw the children of the Ents in Caer Dathil, that was almost like I was astral traveling for maybe just half a minute, if that long.
Okay.
But what I saw and what stuck with me was like much deeper than that. When you're traveling in these other realms, time doesn't really have the same meaning.
Okay.
There was one time in particular where this was in the summer of 2021, where I started kind of astral traveling, and I was like hopping in between dimensions. Sometimes I didn't know where I was.
That's so cool, man.
And yeah, well, it was cool, but it was also crazy.
Pretty scary, I bet.
It literally did drive me insane for a few days.
Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Hey, it's a great story though.
Yeah. Anyway,
and ultimately, my probably by the time I get to I don't know, the 20th issue of my book, I might be to the point where I'm ready to tell that story. But it is quite a story.
Wow. You've gone through so much, and you've mentioned in this episode a little bit about this book. So I'm presuming there are going to be how many more books coming out?
Well, my plan really is to do like an unlimited series. But for this first story arc, there's going to be 6. And actually, the second book is in publishing right now at Ingram Spark. I'm just trying to get past the cover approval, which is a beast. But I've got digital copies of the second book available for sale now on my my shop. So yeah, and I released the trailer for it the other day. It came out. Everything with this book came out really well.
And you did everything yourself.
Yes.
Wow, that's epitome of an author right there. But before we talk about the overview a little bit, or before we talk about the overview, I want to ask you, when it's all said and done, because obviously your plan is to write an infinite series, if not X amount of books, which is, we're talking about books and books and books. But what's your ultimate goal at the end of the day? What do you hope people get out of reading not only volume 1, but maybe volume 100? You know what I mean? When are you going to be able to look back in hindsight and say, okay, I did a good job?
Well, honestly, I kind of feel like that a little bit already, even though I'm not done. But I'm really pleased with how book 2 came out, and I was really pleased with how book 1 came out. And I want to keep going, but ultimately the purpose of this book is to just spread this message of personal spiritual awakening and empowerment, that we all have this divine spark within us. We all have a connection to the divine or to God, whatever you call it. For me, God is very personal, and it's not just a nameless, formless energy, even though God is that. But there's, I have interacted with a consciousness that is God. And the connection with God is something that everyone has. And was I going somewhere else with that? Well, just this, okay? As I've gone out and like talked about my story and been vulnerable, one thing that I've learned is that there are a lot of people out there who have their own version of this story. Maybe it's not as, whiz bang, Star Wars battling gods,
Yeah.
like mine, but everyone has like this story, and a lot of times they're afraid to share it because they're afraid of being ridiculed. And so I feel like getting out there and telling stories like this helps people to be able to be more comfortable with their own story.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, especially in today's generation or today's age, right? It's more difficult to open up about your spiritual beliefs than it is to talk about, gender and all this stuff, right? Nowadays, it's a lot more topsy-turvy, which is to me ridiculous. But, that's just one of the challenges that we all have to face as followers. And one thing that I just off the top of my head, I remember there are a lot more non-believers today because obviously in schools they don't teach you about Jesus anymore. They don't teach you about God anymore. They took that out. But one thing's for sure, there are no non-believers in hell. That's for sure. But
yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about hell is this is how I see it anyway.
Go ahead.
You don't have to die to be in hell. You can be in hell right here on earth. Your spirit can be inhabiting hell, and it radiates out from your inner being, just like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Well,
right.
If the kingdom of heaven is within you, then you also have the capacity to be in the kingdom of hell. So I do think that there are non-believers in hell, but until they learn how to connect with their own inner divine power, they may just remain there.
Right. That's actually a really interesting thought, because if you actually, statistically speaking, if you look at the Bible, hell is not really clearly defined, right? It's not this place of fire and brimstone and all that other stuff that we portray it out to be. So yeah, you're probably spot on there. Who really does know for certain, right? But anyway, going back to the book, The Lion of God, for the people who are interested with everything that we've talked about and your story, your backstory rather, give us a quick overview of this volume, The Lion of God. What's it about?
So The Lion of God, book number 1, is the introduction to the series. Basically, the whole purpose of the book is to just introduce the character of the Lion of God, who he is, what he is, what kinds of stories you can expect to see in this book. So we start out with me just kind of telling my story a little bit, how I had been in the hospital and I hated God, and I came face to face with potential death. And then I had an experience where all of the questions that I had ever had were answered for me, and it changed everything. And I began to experience the other side.
Awesome.
As this angel, Samael, who has been demonized very often historically, but if you are thorough in researching the nature of this angel, I'm far from the only one who says, well, no, there's more to this angel than just being the devil. He is the archangel of God's judgment, which sometimes requires him to do things that we see as bad.
Dirty work, basically, right?
Yeah. So, and then the book also explores a little bit the Samael's twin flame, his divine mirror, who is Lilith. She is only barely introduced in this book, but she has her own splash page, and honestly, it's my favorite piece of art from the book. In fact, I made I made a short film about it.
Wow.
Yeah, and that film is doing great, by the way. It's won 8
That's
international
awesome, man.
festival awards already, and it's about to premiere at the Hollywood Indie Festival.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Lilith, correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about the Lilith, basically the first woman before Eve, right?
That's correct.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, obviously for the viewers, why did you choose to include Lilith in this story? How does she play into the whole thing?
Well,
without giving it away, obviously.
yeah. Well, Lilith is Samael's consort. Historically, according to most tradition. So when Lilith was banished or left the garden, again, depending on who's telling the story, she eventually met the Archangel Samael, and they became eternal consorts. And of course, it's said that they sired an entire race of demons, right? So yeah, there's definitely some interesting history there.
Right.
But for me personally, Lilith has been a powerful part of my journey. This is the part that'll probably get me in trouble, but I've had a lot of experiences with Lilith, and and ultimately for me, Lilith manifests in my life through my wife, who I love very dearly. And we've been through a lot of, we've been married for 26 years.
Wow.
And when you're married that long, like you go through all kinds of things together.
For sure.
And we've had our ups and downs. We've had our highs and lows. And my inclusion of Lilith in the book is, it's basically how the divine feminine has approached and interacted with me as I've gone through this spiritual journey.
Okay. Wow. It seems like a lot has been taken into consideration, putting it into, because I think it's a lot more difficult to write a 24-page book compared to a 200-page book, because you can fill a lot of stuff with 200 pages, right? A lot of fillers and everything.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges that you had to face when you decided to write volume 1 or the first book?
The biggest challenge for me, honestly, when I decided it was time to start telling my story, was just deciding how to structure it, because it is such a non-linear story. You know, when you talk about how God's always there with you, sometimes it's the kind of thing where, like, when you're going through the storm, you don't necessarily see all the things that God is doing. And then one day it's just like things click and you look back and you suddenly see all the various ways that God had your back. And because of that, it's very difficult to tell this story in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
So I had to pick a point in time in my journey where it made the most sense to bring readers in, like a time where things were like getting really interesting, because I started having encounters with ETs and other spiritual phenomenon. And so I had to pick the best time, and then also think about how to structure the story so that I included enough of the spiritual woo-woo details to get readers interested, but not go so overboard with the deep explanations and the whatever else I could go into that I instantly lose everybody. So it was a
delicate balancing act, I bet. Yeah. So I want to ask you a very, very important question right now, David. And this question I usually ask at the end of the show or the episode. Taking your whole story into context, because like you said, it's not a linear story, right? God can act in so many mysterious ways without us even knowing it. That being said, in relation to the Lion of God, if you only had to give the world one piece of advice right now, what would it be?
Life in all its activities everywhere manifest is God in action.
Wow. Wow. That's is that what you live by these days? Have you been living by that?
That is what I try to live by.
Awesome.
You know, I'm human, just like everyone else. So
Right.
I have my own struggles. There are times where I forget, you know, that we are really spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
But overall, yes, I try to live by that philosophy.
Awesome. And please tell the folks at home where they can purchase a copy. If you have a website, tell them, share the website also.
Absolutely. So I have my own website, venomouspress.com, where you can buy signed copies of The Lion of God #1. I have PDFs of The Lion of God #1 and #2 available for sale. At the moment, it's the only place you can get book 2, although I am working on getting the full published copy out there. The Lion of God is also available at Amazon.com, and it will soon be available at many more retailers.
Right. And do you have an author email that people can actually reach out to? You know, probably wanting to invite you to do book signings or whatever?
Oh, yes. People can reach out to me either at venomouspress@gmail.com or cor2879@gmail.com, which is my primary email address, and people are welcome to email me there.
I'm going to warn you, David, there are going to be emails. So please prepare yourself.
That's okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Is there a last message you want to give the folks at home?
Oh my. I also
No pressure.
I also have a very active YouTube channel. I put out a lot of content on actually YouTube, TikTok, all kinds of socials, but YouTube is where I try to focus my creative output. And that is at Venomous Press on YouTube.
Okay. Venomous as in the, like, venom, right? Just to clarify,
Yes.
VENOM. Okay.
Yes. Yes. And
Okay.
this, so where that comes from is from the name of the angel Samael, which literally translates to the venom of God.
I
And
see.
what this represents is the venom of God is a bitter drink that is it is the highest truth that is often death to the ego and life to the spirit.
Wow. Death to the ego, life to the spirit.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. So let me take that in. But yeah, thank you so much once again, David, for joining us on the show today and for sharing your very powerful and unique story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so folks, if you want to grab a copy of a true to life story that David made a lot more fun and a lot more easy to read, would you classify this as a graphic novel? Graphic novel or a comic book, David?
I would classify it as a comic book, and then once the first 6 books are complete, I will be compiling them into a single graphic novel volume.
Awesome. Okay, so folks, please grab a copy of David's book. It's amazing. It's fun. As he said, the goal is to beat Star Wars, so let's aim for that. But yeah, folks, thank you so much for watching the scene, and thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next scene. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sean.